After 3 days of arduous travel, King Dendark and his army arrived at the valley that lay near the base of the mountain where the legendary Tree of Peace stood. The valley was wide and desolate, its rocky terrain contrasting sharply with the lush greenery that crowned the mountain ahead. The king's army set up camp in the valley below, preparing for the long wait as their king rode up the winding mountain path, flanked by only a few of his personal guards. However, as they neared the top, his guards stopped, aware that they could go no further. The summit was protected by ancient magic, allowing only kings to pass. King Dendark continued alone, the sense of isolation and sacredness deepening as he climbed higher. At the top, he beheld the enormous oak tree, its branches stretching wide like a canopy, guarding the sacred ground beneath. Under the tree was the famed round table with 9 intricately carved chairs, each seat designated for the kings of the 9 realms. The area was quiet, except for the presence of a few ethereal women dressed in sheer white robes, their movements soft as they tended to the tree. Their nearly transparent garments seemed to shimmer in the light, their presence adding an otherworldly air to the place. Their soft footsteps made no sound, and their eyes never met those of the king. Despite the tension that had been growing within him throughout the journey, King Dendark felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over him as he approached the table. He noted that the other kings were already seated, waiting in stoic silence, except for the empty chair of the late King of Shadow Bay. His absence cast a heavy shadow over the gathering, a grim reminder of the destruction that had brought them all together. King Dendark bowed slightly in greeting and took his seat, breaking the silence. "My kings," he began, his voice low but firm, "I have summoned you here to discuss a threat that looms over us all. An invader army, led by the one called King Drakonis, has annihilated the entire kingdom of Shadow Bay. This threat will not end with Shadow Bay. It will spread, and each of us may face it sooner than we think. We must decide now. Will we stand together, or will we fall, one kingdom at a time?" There was a pause, the kings exchanging glances, some stoic, others showing the weight of Dendark's words in the lines on their faces. The first to speak was the King of Wolflands, a man of immense size and known for his ferocity in battle. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, his voice laced with defiance. "Pardon me, my friend, but no army, no matter how strong, could invade Wolflands. Never." His tone carried an air of finality, as though the mere suggestion of danger was an insult to his kingdom's strength. King Dendark met his gaze, speaking softly but with the sharp edge of truth. Nor was there an army strong enough to invade Shadow Bay, and yet here we are. The King of Serenthia, a slender man known for his wisdom, leaned forward. "What is your proposal, Dendark? What action do you suggest?" Dendark's eyes flashed with resolve. "We march to Shadow Bay. We confront this King Drakonis and his army. They must either leave these lands in peace, or we kill them all. This is a threat that cannot be ignored." There was a murmur among the kings. Some nodded, while others appeared hesitant. Finally, the King of Linyan, a calm and calculating man, spoke. "We must put it to a vote, as is our custom. Bound by the words of the Broken Kingdom, whatever decision we make here, we all must honour." He looked to each of his fellow kings. "So, should we proceed with Dendark's plan?" King Dendark, in a solemn gesture, took his dagger and placed it on the table before him. One by one, the other kings followed suit. First was the King of Linyan, then the King of Serenthia, both men known for their measured wisdom. Tension filled the air as the remaining kings hesitated, but finally the King of Dane and the King of Sandmark added their daggers to the table. The collective will of the council had been decided. "It is settled," the King of Linyon declared. "We prepare our armies. In 2 days' time we march to Shadow Bay. May the gods be with us." As the meeting adjourned, King Dendark rose and made his way down the mountain, his mind heavy with the weight of the impending war. As he descended, he overheard the hushed voices of 2 of the other kings. "This is wrong," the King of Wolflands whispered to the King of Sandmark. "We are risking our soldiers, our people, for other kingdoms. Why should Wolflands march to war for the fall of Shadow Bay?" The King of Sandmark responded, his voice equally low but firm. "We have no choice. We are bound by the words of the Broken Kingdom. We must honour our oaths. Once this is done, we can reassess and decide what's best for our own people." King Dendark, hearing their words, clenched his jaw but said nothing. He understood their concerns. War was never an easy choice, and few had the stomach for it unless absolutely necessary. Yet in his heart Dendark knew the truth. This threat would not stop with Shadow Bay. If they did not act now, one kingdom would fall after another until nothing remained but ruins and ash. As he reached the valley, his men were already preparing for what was to come. The battle ahead would decide the fate of their world. 2 days later, armies from across Linyon would converge, swords raised, marching toward an uncertain future. The alliance of kings stood on the edge of history, but whether they would fall or triumph together remained unknown. The fate of the 9 realms hung in the balance. As King Dendark left the sacred area of the Tree of Peace, his guards, standing at attention at the base of the mountain, approached immediately upon his arrival. His expression was stern, his mind weighed down by the decisions made at the council. "Prepare our army. We'll march in 2 days," he commanded without hesitation, mounting his horse. His voice carried an authority that left no room for doubt. The guards swiftly moved to carry out his orders, knowing the gravity of the situation. Dendark, accompanied by his trusted adviser, the King's Hand, rode back to the campsite nestled in the valley below. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows over the tents, but the camp was alive with movement. Soldiers were preparing for the inevitable march to war, sharpening swords, tending to horses, and securing armour. The tension was palpable, though none dared speak of the growing uncertainty in their hearts. The king dismounted and strode purposefully toward his private tent, a structure guarded by his most fearsome warriors. It stood slightly apart from the main camp, offering both seclusion and protection. As he entered, his King's Hand followed, the only man allowed such privilege without question. Inside the tent, the air was thick with the smell of burning incense. Maps of the 9 realms were spread across a large wooden table, and candles flickered in the corners. King Dendark removed his gloves and sat heavily in a chair, his gaze fixed on the table, as if searching for answers in the scattered maps. "I have some doubts," Dendark said quietly, his voice betraying the uncertainty that had been gnawing at him since the council. He leaned forward, fingers tracing the edges of Shadow Bay's borders on the map. "If they truly wanted to, they could have attacked any one of our kingdoms by now. Why haven't they? Why did they choose Shadow Bay? If it wasn't just to show their strength, there must be another reason behind their attack." The king's hand, a man of few words and deep thoughts, stepped closer. He had served Dendark for many years, and the two had a bond forged in both battle and council. "What do you think, my lord?" he asked, knowing Dendark had already begun to formulate a plan. Dendark tapped his fingers on the table, his brow furrowing. "There is something more to this invasion. I cannot shake the feeling that Shadow Bay was not just a random target. There are ancient secrets in these lands, powers long forgotten. We cannot afford to march blindly into this war without understanding what we face." The king's hand listened intently. "Perhaps the invaders seek something more than land, something hidden." Dendark nodded. "Yes, I fear they are after something of great value, something that may not even belong to us, but could shift the balance of power." He paused, then stood abruptly, turning to face his adviser. "Send a search party to the Forbidden Temple," he commanded. "It lies on the outskirts of what was once the kingdom of Shadow Bay. Have them search for any signs of disturbance, but tell them to avoid conflict. Under no circumstances are they to engage with anyone they encounter." The king's hand looked surprised. The Forbidden Temple was a place of legend, a place where few dared to tread. Its reputation was as dark as the land it sat upon, shrouded in mystery and danger. "The Forbidden Temple? My lord, do you believe there is a connection?" "I do not know," Dendark admitted, his voice sombre. "But I cannot ignore the possibility. Too many strange things have been happening. The fall of Shadow Bay, the ancient magic stirring, and the rumours of the Dark Sword, it all points to something far more dangerous than we've faced before. We need to understand what we're up against, or we risk leading our men into a battle we cannot win." The hand nodded, sensing the urgency in the king's words. "I will assemble our finest scouts immediately, my lord. They will leave under the cover of night and report back as soon as possible." "Good," Dendark said, his gaze hardening. "And make sure they understand. Discretion is paramount. If they are caught, they must disappear without a trace. I want no word of this mission reaching the invaders." The hand bowed, then turned to leave the tent. As he stepped outside, the cold night air bit at his skin, a stark contrast to the warmth within. He moved quickly, summoning the best scouts and outlining their mission in precise detail. The tension in the camp was growing as soldiers whispered of the coming war. But the king's hand had no time for rumours. There was much at stake, and the success of this mission could very well decide the fate of their kingdom. Back inside the tent, Dendark remained seated, staring at the map of the 9 realms. His thoughts drifted to the future. What would become of his kingdom, of the entire world, if they failed to stop this invasion? His mind replayed the conversations from the council, the whispers of doubt, the fear that lurked behind every king's eyes. Could they truly stand united against this unknown force? Or was the alliance of the 9 realms doomed to fracture, leaving each kingdom to fend for itself? As the night wore on, Dendark knew one thing for certain. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and time was running out.